morning, good afternoon and good evening to you all. Welcome to the World Ocean Forum 2021. My name is Manuel Barange. I'm the Director of the Fisheries and Aquaculture Division at the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I will be talking to you about blue foods today, and to do that I'm going to share my screen. And I hope you can see my screen now. But before I get to the topic, let me say something about the FAO, because it may not be known to many of you. The FAO was created in 1945 to provide technical solutions when 72% of the world was living in poverty. At the time, expert opinion was that we could not feed a world of 3 billion people. And this is a real challenge in our hands, how to feed a world of 10 billion people without running out of natural resources. Let me tell you what the situation is like now. Over the last 5 years, 6 years actually, as you can see in this figure, the number of undernourishment in the world has been increasing. In 2019, it was 650 million, and in 2020, FAO estimates it's exceeded 760 million people. That's over 100 million more undernourished people in one single year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We estimate that even after the pandemic is over 700 million will still be undernourished in 2021. Through this process of the pandemic, one concept that has been emerging through all the conversations about food security is the need to transform food systems. What does it mean to transform food systems, and what does Blue Foods transformation then would mean? Let me tell you a story, and the story starts here. The trend in fisheries and aquaculture production up to 1995. At that point in 1995, capture fisheries was growing inexorably, almost linearly, and there were serious concerns over the sustainability of that practice. At the time, only 24% of total fisheries and aquaculture production came from aquaculture, an industry that was still emerging and reaching its potential. At that point, the FAO endorsed or provided for endorsement to countries the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries in order to make sure that these trends were reined in some way. Now let's look at it in 2019, 25 years later. Capture fisheries has plateaued, has stabilized to the same levels of capture as in 1995. The number of overfished has grown slightly, is now 34%, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Aquaculture, meanwhile, has become the fastest growing food production system in the world, and is now providing almost 50% of all the production in the sector. It has grown by 271%. Even aquatic plants aquaculture has grown by almost 300%. This is a full, complete transformation in the sector, almost under the radar, through a number of transformations in private sector, in public sector, in the markets, but without very real directness, except the Code of Conduct that provided some guidance. Now, the result of this change is the incredible nutritional outcomes of fish production. And these outcomes can be seen in this slide. The consumption of fish has grown from 9 kilograms per person per year in 1961 to 20.5 kilograms per person per year in 2018. The proportion of fish products, and that means fish, mollusks, and crustaceans, that are used for non-food purposes has in fact been declining over time and is now as low as it was in the 1960s. What you can see as well is that while in 1958, for example, the majority of the fish consumed by humans came from capture fisheries, now in 2018 in this figure, more is produced by aquaculture than by capture fisheries. What does society really want from aquatic foods? This is something that was discussed at an international symposium on fisheries sustainability that we ran in FAO in November 2019, just before the pandemic. It brought 1,000 participants from 100 countries and provided a number of recommendations for a new vision for capture fisheries. In February 2021, the FAO Committee on Fisheries met, took account of the Code of Conduct, took account of what has happened over the last 25 years, and the advice provided by the International Symposium on Fisheries Sustainability, and came up with a declaration for sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. A declaration that does three things. First, it recognizes the successes in the sector since the Code of Conduct was endorsed in terms of combating poverty and hunger. Second, identified priority areas that are needed to further transform aquatic foods. And third, develop a new vision for the sector in the 21st century. From this came the concept of blue transformation, an FAO strategic priority, now part of the strategic framework of FAO for the next decade. What does blue transformation mean and what it is intended to achieve? Well, the Blue Transformation Initiative is an objective-based initiative, has very clear objectives. The first objective is to feed the world through aquaculture expansion. The second objective is to transform fisheries through better management. And the third, to improve fish value chain efficiency, viability, and inclusiveness. I'm going to unpackage those a little bit further. First, what do we mean by aquaculture expansion? Well, we have a target. We believe that we can achieve a 30 to 45% growth in global aquaculture by the end of this decade, with quality foods that are produced sustainably, with a particular focus on the region, providing sustainable solutions and extension services. There are a number of priority areas that we are working on. We need to innovate in feed ingredients and technologies. We need to genetically improve and diversify what we culture. We need to improve our biosecurity and disease controls, provide digital technologies and intelligent systems, integrated approaches, and climate change impacts and opportunities. One demonstration of the potential for this aquaculture expansion can be seen in this figure. 88% of all aquaculture production is produced in a single continent, in Asia. And even within Asia, a very significant, large majority of the production comes from a single country, China. This gives you an idea of the potential for expansion and the areas that need expanding. We estimate that if blue transformation is achieved by the end of this decade, almost 70% of the fish that we use for human consumption will come from aquaculture. What about the second objective, transformative fisheries management? Well, the target here is to restore fish stocks to levels capable of producing maximum sustainable yield, which is the policy agreed concept in many national, regional and global policy frameworks. The focus here is on ensure effective management of 100% of seascapes and waterscapes based on ecosystem approaches. The areas that we need to particularly work on are to develop better data collection systems in many places, improve data and limited stock assessment methods, and the management plans for capacity limited places, ensure that we look at innovative compliance and enforcement methods, and ensure that we adapt to the inevitability of climate change. Also important is to integrate and align national and regional management, including in the fight against IUU. Now, why do we need to do this? This is the iconic figure of FAO of sustainability of marine fish stocks since 1974 to now. Currently, 34% of stocks are overfished. That means that 66% are not. But nevertheless, this percentage is growing and needs to stop. Now, what we've seen as well, and this is work from Ray Hilborn's team in Seattle, is that stocks that are under effective management are increasingly sustainable. Let me explain this figure. This figure is an average, a composite of about 800 fish stocks for which we have proper assessment and management in place. And these 800 stocks provide about 50% of all the landings around the world. Okay, 50% of all fish catches. The line in red is the biomass, in reference to the biomass that produces maximum sustainable yield. And what you can see is a decline in the average biomass of these stocks from the 1970s onwards, and a turn of the trend from about 2005 approximately. And now these stocks have a biomass that exceeds the biomass that produces MSY. Catches and fishing effort has been decreasing as a result, of course. So that means that we know how to fix fisheries, we know how to make them sustainable, we just need to manage them. And so in order to change this trend, we need better management around the world. The third objective of Blue Transformation are innovative and upgraded value chains. The target here is to have more inclusive returns through less waste, less losses and discards, better yields, new markets, and less barriers to trade. We need to reactivate the chains affected particularly by the COVID-19 pandemic. The priority areas of work include value chain analysis, zero waste fish value chains, digital solutions, innovation including novel products for the markets, better food safety risk analysis, and looking at aquatic foods as part of a healthy diet rather than as an isolated production system. A lot of consumer education and awareness is needed to achieve this. As you know, 30% of fish and seafood are lost, and this is the opportunity. If we were to reduce this to zero, we would increase production significantly and improve the outcomes for human nutrition. And for that, the FAO provides all sorts of guidelines and policy frameworks, from the voluntary guidelines for catch documentation schemes, the application of blockchains in seafood value chains, and we'll continue in this line to ensure that we support the markets as much as possible and the value chains all the way from the producer to the consumer. Now, Blue Transformation is not just a concept, it has quantifiable outcomes, which we have modeled. We estimate that if we achieve full Blue Transformation, the high road lines that you see here, the red line and the blue straight line here, if we achieve Blue Transformation, we estimate that we can achieve 25.6 kilograms of fish consumed per person per year by the middle of the century. That's about 25% more than we currently consume per capita. It will be an incredible effort that will also reduce the impacts that our food production systems have on our land-based ecosystems. These figures have been published already in the UN Nutrition Report 2021 and a paper in Nature by Chris Golden et al. But also, if we fail on transforming blue systems and blue foods, the dotted lines here, and what we call low roads, we actually will see a decrease in per capita consumption to about 18.5 kilograms per person per a year. And this will, again, put enormous pressure on land-based protein production. Now, also less quantitative outcomes of Blue Transformation, nevertheless very significant. Support to livelihoods, addressing inequality, addressing empowerment of women and youth, supporting small-scale producers, securing the cultural values of fisheries and aquaculture, providing futures for communities, ensure sustainable development and decent work, and taking care of indigenous knowledge. It's a win-win situation. But why am I talking about Blue Transformation here in the context of blue foods to feed the world? Because it needs alignment from all of us. FAO cannot achieve this alone. We need science, we need technology, we need government influence and policy, we need private sector engagement and innovation, we need civil societies. Each one of these sectors and these needs have different relationship with the three objectives of Blue Transformation. And without them all, we will not achieve the transformation required. And with that, I'll leave you with this idea We are entering a decade of blue transformation, a decade that coincides with the decade of action for the Sustainable Development Goals, the last decade before we can deliver the SDGs. It is also the decade of ocean science for sustainable development, and it also is aligned with the decade on ecosystem restoration. The UN system and its agencies have marked the way. We have a decade to fix the wrongs, and I would like to trust that you will all follow me and all work with me in ensuring blue transformation. With that, I will now stop my screen, and I thank you very much for your attention today.